Hold on. So why is it that fanfics, non-canon ships, and even gender-bent art are accepted as harmless fun, but the moment a black artist reimagines their favorite anime character with features like dark skin and kinky hair, the anime community erupts?
I created an artwork where I drew myself, I repeat myself, as Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service, which is a Studio Ghibli classic. Shortly after posting my artwork, I started getting DMs like these, telling me to kill myself over a drawing.
The skin tone based variants, especially the black ones, are usually the ones that get this kind of response. The gender bent ones, they never get anything. I wonder why. Don't you find that suspicious?
Cosplay a character from a specific anime or anything, and the character isn't black, the comment section without fail will be filled with blank isn't black. Or even worse, blank isn't a monkey. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not okay.
It's mid-December. You log onto formerly Twitter because you want to check on the mental health of your moots and oomphs that haven't abandoned the platform yet, and you get bombarded with heated opinions over a fan art by an allegedly 16-year-old artist who drew Okarun and Momo from Dandadan as Black and Latina respectively. An image which the English voice actor for Okarun, AJ Beckles, uses as his profile picture, causing the discourse to explode. The image gets over 90 million impressions in the app alone, and insults and arguments are flying across retweets and comments the further you scroll. But you start to realize the discourse stems into two main arguments. One side is insisting that this particular fan art is racist as it erases Japanese ethnic features and insinuates that the race-bent versions are somehow superior than the original. While others argue that the fan art is harmless, made out of appreciation for the original, and is just a way of self-expression. Stuck in the onslaught of text and images, you struggle to understand how a single image has caused such a divisive discourse. But what if I told you this wasn't the first time a race-bent version of an anime character started an argument that led to chaos? In 2022, user Soul King Lives posted on Twitter Jujutsu Kaisen fan art with race-bent versions of Gojo and Yuji, which caused a similar online scuffle. In 2021, Thuman made a fan art where she drew herself as Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service, which elicited a round of hateful and racist drawings by other users. Also in 2021, YouTuber Veritas Joe made a video exploiting the hatred and racism prevalent towards Black cosplayers dressing as anime characters, a plight that has existed for years as cosplayers fight harassment over not having the same skin tone as characters that they are replicating and expressing. It seems every time a Black fan artist in particular wants to show off their work, there is some level of hateful rhetoric being thrown their way. Yet in these same fandoms where people praise and create spider-sonas, gender-bent versions of popular anime men, and the almighty Brazilian Miku, who is praised for uniting the world and who just recently, in August of 2024, took the internet by storm, only months before the Dandadan fan art controversy. And all this has made fans wonder, are pockets of the anime fandom hypocritical, misguided, or just plain hateful? To get to the bottom of this question, I think we should start at the source of the issue. Fan art. What even is it? Since it's a combination of two words, the best way I think to define it is to define each of the words separately. If art is defined as expression or application of human creativity and imagination, and a fan is defined as someone who admires or supports an interest, then it's safe to say that fan art is expression of creativity and imagination created by a person who supports that interest. But it would be boring to go by stock definitions alone. Art is a creative medium after all, so I asked fellow fans about their thoughts on fan art and what it means to them. Seipu.s_portfolio said, much like fan fiction to writers, fan art is a great way for artists to practice their technique and create using their favorite fandom as a base. One can take inspiration and make art that is fun and brings joy, or even goes beyond it and develops more. It can even start conversations about the story and or characters because of the way the artist interprets the subject. Another anonymous user says, I think media as a whole creates modern myths, and same as we did with old myths. We people adopt these stories and modify them to fit with our own interpretations in order to enjoy them better, to see ourselves in them, or simply because we are a creative species and want to explore the what-if scenarios. Ashton wrote, in reference to fan art and cosplay, they are both a labor of love for whatever piece of media that they were inspired by. And I think we wouldn't have as many artists if it wasn't for fan art, nor as many people who know how to sew if it wasn't for cosplay. Being a part of a community and appreciating something you love can be a big motivator for learning or continuing a skill. And at Pickle 1.0 says, I think fan art is the pillar of fandom along with fan fictions, edits, and AMVs. It's so fun to see how the fandom interacts with characters and the creative scenarios they put them in. Also, some characters benefit greatly from fan-made representations, redesigns, and that kind of stuff, which can sometimes make people get into a new series they may have never heard of. It's clear to see that fan art, just like art, encompasses a wide variety of techniques and mediums, including writing, music, fashion, and drawing. For example, cosplay is arguably a form of fan art, as it embodies a fan wanting to creatively portray a character. Sometimes cosplay is very rigid in its application, meaning a cosplayer may attempt to completely replicate a character down to the smallest detail. And these types of cosplay are really popular in places like Japan, and even some notable cosplayers outside of Japan have found popularity for replicating cosplay down to the tiniest detail. However, this type of cosplay is far from the only type that exists, nor the only way that fans can enjoy the art form. There's an entire thriving ecosystem of cosplayers who take inspiration from their favorite characters and recreate them using their own personal style and interpretations. For example, people have incorporated character fashion and clothing into their own designs to create a sort of closet cosplay, a more casual form of cosplay made out of whatever clothing and items that fans find and use to create their favorite characters. Some cosplayers even responded to my survey talking about why they like cosplay and why they do it. Josepha says they do it because I love so much a character that I want to become like them or feel like them for at least a moment, and I love dressing up and sewing. Chilling Like Ashling said, it's fun to try and capture the essence of a character design in real life. I don't professionally cosplay, only sometimes when I attend cons, so it's a chance for me to stretch myself creatively. And an anonymous user says, the amount of time and effort that goes into a cosplay is not something I would do for just anything. So I also assume that if someone else is doing it, they too must love it with all their heart. All these variations of cosplay and how to do it are done with the intent of embodying a character through the lens of a fan who loves and appreciates and often respects them. It is a beloved hobby by fans that is often done without issue as long as they're being respectful of the character by not mocking certain cultural elements of the design. Despite cosplay being art, though, there are still a few flawed individuals that think that it can't be done unless you are accurately representing the character, including having the same skin tone and hair texture as said character, which is a sentiment that also leads into fan art. There's this idea that the more similar your art is to the original, the better it is, which stems from the argument of style versus realism that kind of has permeated art since its inception. The idea that art that replicates life or other art is inherently better because it sticks to the reality of what already exists. However, if we did not have art that was more stylized and didn't replicate life to a T, we wouldn't have art forms such as anime and manga to begin with. So most fans would probably agree that unrealistic art can be just as beautiful and expressive as realistic art. But when it comes to fan art, drawings, paintings, and cosplay, the same should also be true. Variation in styles should be fine because it's personal expression, and that is what makes art interesting. Sadly, though, not all anime fans seem to hold the same opinion when it comes to certain versions of fan art in the fandom. Because instead of viewing fan art where characters are drawn with black features like darker skin, curly hair, or pronounced lips as simply art inspired by the original, people up online believe this type of fan art is erasure via blackwashing. Blackwashing, race swapping, or race bending in media often means replacement of a character's race. This is most commonly referenced in American TV shows and movies in the United States, for example, where some media take a character who has lighter skin and replace them with someone with darker skin, which is known as blackwashing, or swapping the race or nationality of a character with a different one, race swapping. The concept goes both ways, and sides for and against this are heavily debated against. There is a history of replacing black and brown characters and even historical figures in movies with either white people in general or just people wearing blackface for over a century in Hollywood. However, I do think there's a huge distinction between blackwashing in franchises versus in fan art and fandom. This is because I believe fan artists are not trying to replace the original characters with their fan art. In fact, you could argue that most fan artists are incapable of replacing the original, as most fans have no say on the final designs of these characters. Most posts of redrawn characters with darker skin tones, different hair textures, and Afrocentric physical features, like more pronounced lips and noses, are popular in communities of fans online and often don't make it outside of those pockets of fans online. Take Mukokuseki's art, for example. Her work takes anime series like Inuyasha and completely reimagines the characters in her own style, which combines them with, for example, the Songhai Empire, which is a West African region that existed at the same time period as Inuyasha. This unique approach to fan art shows appreciation for the original work and the cultures that inspired her, and this is what she had to say about what fan art means to her and why she does it. She says, "I have always viewed racebending as another way to create a fan interpretation of something you enjoy. Much like gender bending, it's just a fun way to see how things would look if they were different. As an artist, I also find these creative. When a completely different culture is applied to something, an artist has to consider how to make it work. You must ask yourself how certain hairstyles and skin tones would make sense without making the character unrecognizable. In general, these illustrations are only done for fun and are more like a use than anything else. I view these in a similar light to Brazilian Miku, Spider-Verse, and Happily Ever After fairy tales for every child." Another artist, Dandadan Arts, who creates fan art inspired by anime, cartoons, and other areas of pop culture, but reimagines them in his own vibrant and unique style, had this to say about racebending and fan art and what it means to him. He says, "In my opinion, racebending a popular character can only offer more of a different perspective on that character. I think it should be embraced. If we all draw the same character the same way, that would be so boring. I'd love to see an indigenous person's take on Captain America. What would their version of Spider-Man look like? I don't think racebending and fan art is ever meant to be offensive initially, but racebending can be weaponized when a certain section of a fan base shows their ignorance and hate for something that looks different or has a different perspective. Those toxic fans are what give racebending a negative connotation overall when they use it as a form of retaliation." Another argument I often hear thrown around specifically towards artists that racebend and do fan art is this idea that they do not put as much effort into their own original works, when personally every fan artist that I've ever followed also has original characters, series, works that they've created independently. For example, Artist Individual makes his own colorful webcomics and original characters, as well as occasionally draws fan art. White Manga is an artist and co-founder of Saturday AM, a diverse shonen manga company founded in the United States. He also has his own manga series, Apple Black. In his spare time, he enjoys drawing fan art of his favorite characters in his style while occasionally racebending them. Not to mention artists we just heard from, Mukokuseki and Dandadan Arts, create their own original characters and designs while also making time to create fan art for fun. I also asked my audience to see how they thought about racebending and black fan art. My name is Rafat says, "It's okay because it's done out of love and out of the idea of seeing how a character would look in that person's interpretation of a black person, brown person, Asian person, etc. The artists who do it are not declaring that the original design is terrible or in any way trying to fix it. It's just an alternative fan art, a what if it's done out of fun. In media, the idea of alternative realities exists in many series. Into the Spider-Verse, Voltron Legendary Defender, Arcane, Minutemen, etc. Fans can accept this notion and have shown to understand that, but then they don't wish to expand this thought process to fan art." An anonymous user says, "I think black-brown edits of characters are totally fine. I'm East Asian, Chinese specifically, and I find that most anime characters are blank slates and don't make me feel represented for my race, which is totally fine since I don't need representation from every single piece of media. Most anime characters do not have Asian features, or at least ones outside of the Eurocentric beauty standards. So I don't feel like I'm losing any representation if someone makes them black. I've traveled to China and lived with Asians for most of my life, and media never really portrays our natural features. Flatter noses and faces, tan tan skin, etc., and instead opts for Eurocentric beauty standards that are pretty hard to attain. So a moderately tan Asian girl with a thick monolid and flat nose doesn't really feel represented by your average pale, big-eyed anime character with a dot for a nose. Another anonymous user says, it is okay to change a majority group character into a minority group character due to the lack of representation present, but not reverse. The medium of anime, for example, has a default appearance and beauty standard that depends on colorism. As such, ethnic traits that do not fit the Yamato Japanese are underrepresented. Black Japanese people do not get nearly the amount of respectful representation that Yamato Japanese do, who are literally the majority in default in anime. So drawing a character to be more like you when you are not the norm is totally fine. In reverse, though, if you change the few existing representation into the majority group, you're only adding onto the existing erasure and beauty standard that favors paleness and specific ethnic traits. This is because in anime, Yamato Japanese are the majority and standard and not unique to anime. Another anonymous user says people sometimes want to see themselves portrayed in the things they enjoy or as the characters they like. So that's why sometimes we do portrait characters with our skin color imbued in our culture. I understand Jewish Harry Potter, Brazilian Miku, etc. But then it's kind of hypocritical that only people that do whitewashing are deadly threatened, stalked, exposed. Sorry, to me whitewashing is wrong, specifically if they do it to black or brown characters, but that's just a drawing, a fan expression, not a canon-altering executive decision. Chibi Vesicle says, for the most part, I'm going with yes, black fan art is okay, but with a certain exception. If the original work has the ethnicity of a character being central to their role or identity, I think racebending not understanding the purpose of that character. The easiest example for this would be Asurpa from Golden Kamuy. A major aspect of her character is that she is an ethnic minority who has limited rights and is discriminated against as a result. If one were to make her Japanese, for example, she's lost the entire part of her lived identity. Or a series where the cast is ethnically diverse. A great example for this is Keikai Sensen, where a major point is that characters are not all the same race or even species. When someone draws fan art that takes a non-white character and makes them look white while keeping the rest of the cast the same, it feels off. And Bunifuto says, I don't think it's okay when someone suggests it as a fix, like, there, I fixed it. I do think it's okay and fun, thoughtful when someone does race bend because it's relatable to them or just fun to imagine. One comes from a place of exploration and love, the former comes from a place of superiority and distaste. For reference, I am mixed, Asian and white, so people are always trying to guess my race or erase parts of me, saying I'm not Asian enough or I'm not white enough. This is where it's painful to see fix-it edits, because who are you to decide that? But I also very much understand the need for exploration and wanting to see yourself represented. Plus, wasn't Brazilian Miku trending recently? And everyone seemed to love that. Why is this different? Though I personally believe that racebending in fan art can be done with good intentions and fits the definition of what fan art seems to mean to most people, I think it's also important to hear from varying different perspectives on the topic and why it's become such a divisive issue in fandom. I also want to clarify that personally, I do agree with the sentiment that I don't like when people say that they are fixing an art, especially if there isn't a critique on the art style or on the character or on anything, and they are simply just saying like how they see them as the only way that they should be seen. Nor am I saying that anyone creating fan art of a person and then changing how that actual person looks in real life, and as if to insinuate that they are fixing them. No, I'm not saying that is good in any way at all. I do not condone that at all. However, I do wonder if the intent is creative expression for fun and not to harm other people. Why has it become such a spiteful battle to racebend a character? And I don't have every perspective on this, but I do also want to explore other people's reactions and thoughts about why they think it's not okay to racebend. And I think we should be open to hearing other people's perspectives. And I don't want anyone to harass anyone that I mentioned in this video. And additionally, if you have an opinion, no matter what side you're on, please leave it in the comments below. Please be respectful about it. And if you are thinking of responding to someone, please be respectful in your response. I want this to be a place where we can actually have conversations about these things and not just yell at each other like on Twitter, because on Twitter nothing gets solved. I actually want to have discourse that's not spewed in hatred, please. Okay. Inkposter.bluesky.social says, I normally don't think race bending is okay unless the person is doing so for the sake of creativity and just giving the character a cool alternate design. As long as the person has wholesome intentions, it's fine. I don't like it when people phrase it as fixing a character because that implies the previous design is inferior for not being the skin color the new artist depicted it in. Racism, essentially. Atomic Herman says, I get that there is not enough representation. But whether the characters belong to a big company or an independent artist, it's clearly not okay to race bend because they spend years drafting and thinking about every detail and maybe putting a bit of themselves in it. And when you come changing their character's race, it feels like you're sending a message who says, hello, your character is trash because they don't fit my vision, I'll fix it. Also, seeing that with Disney, clearly I would prefer people make their own characters. This is how I perceive race bending. It feels like they're saying to my face, hey, we don't care about you and you don't deserve it even if we spent time and effort crafting a character. So just have this character but in black. So yeah, clearly race bending is no good to me and people should at least keep it to themselves. Al says, race swapping a character that represents an idea, like Spider-Man, is different than race swapping a character that is an individual whose race and culture are important to the story an artist wants to tell. Something that matters to me as a multiracial creator. That context and culture should be respected by fan creators. I feel much the same about art depicting a character as the opposite sex or a different nationality, sexuality, etc. An anonymous user says, I'm a bit in the middle when it comes to race bending, but I think that isn't okay due to the connotation it has. I think the topic of race can be a touchy subject. If I'm talking about anime specifically, I'd say that not all cases should be considered race bending. Not all anime characters are Japanese. Most of them are, but not all of them. Some come from entirely different universes, and additionally, being darker or black isn't entirely an indication of race. There are darker-skinned Asians, some of them are mixed, some aren't, and they exist, they just aren't pushed as much in media because of colorism. Growing up here, most people prefer to see lighter-skinned characters. Another anonymous user says, I think assigning a race to an ambiguous character is okay, or having a character as mixed race. But entirely changing a character's race for the sake of representation seems icky to me when there are so many black artists and characters you can support instead of race-bent characters. There needs to be more black representation in media, but taking a pre-existing character and changing the fundamentals of their identity does not do that. I think it is different for gender swapping because gender is something you can change in real life and it isn't something that is inherited. I believe each of these opinions are valid, and thank you for the people who submitted them. Some argue that if it's not okay to whitewash dark-skinned characters, then why should it be okay to whitewash Asian or white characters? Other anti-race bending fans also argue that pro-race bending fans tend to attack artists who don't draw characters with the correct skin tone, yet blatantly make fan art that doesn't fit the original characters by drawing them with a different race or ethnicity. Such is the case with B-Cub Comics' drawing of Splatoon character Marina Ida, who was critiqued for lightening the skin of the character. This stirred an argument that led to the involvement of black fan art, in which a user responded to what some considered unjustified criticism of the artwork by saying, don't worry, they do it too. It is an issue to lighten a dark-skinned character's skin tone because brown-skinned characters are rarely represented in media, and if they are, they're rarely represented accurately. However, if someone was making fan art and their intention was not to harm anyone in the process, I believe that's also worth considering when critiquing their work. Also, I want to say the creator apologized for their drawing because of all the backlash they received. Yeah, this quoted retweet received 32 million impressions, and both of these images sparked a cascading outrage that led to some of the most culturally insensitive, during the Crow era, post-World War II hate speech that I have ever seen online. The absolute vitriol being spun between multiple groups of people that probably have never interacted in real life, nor probably ever will. Absolutely dumbfounding to read. I have no words. It took me several weeks just to get over reading through this thread alone. There are a few screenshots I'm going to be sharing on the screen and you can pause to read them, but I'm not going to read them out loud because I can't look at them anymore. It's been a lot. I can't process them anymore, but just so you know, there are other arguments and things being said that I purposely left out and did not take screenshots of. Honestly, I would say if you value your mental health, do not read other tweets in this reply. But basically, a few months later, the teenage Dandadan artists also found themselves caught in the middle of this battle because of their fan art of the series, leading to another endless back and forth that included both spiteful comments like the ones seen in the Splatoon fan art one, as well as a lot of users simply trying to reason with one another over their differing opinions. Again, of course, the involvement of Japanese users made the argument somewhat more intense because some believe that because these users are Japanese, they have like the final say on matters of art pertaining to anime simply because they are Japanese and don't have any other connection to the industry at all. I do feel like I need to point out that there are Japanese people who do say that they feel personally attacked by these fan arts because it feels like it's erasing Japanese culture. We're going to get into Mukokuseki and universal character design a little bit later and how that may or may not represent people. If people do feel offended by just any changes in that is a conversation worth having, and we should talk about that as well. While on the pro race bent side, some argue that if anime characters sometimes have Black characteristics, for example, there are characters that often have afros or dreadlocks, locks, large noses, and pronounced lips. Sometimes these characters have them in a way that often mocks Black culture. So then why can't a fan harmlessly draw a character as Black for fun? Or why is it acceptable for anime to often be inspired by or borrow from aspects of Black culture, Black American culture, other cultures with a Black diaspora that include music, dance, and fashion, without also acknowledging where they get those inspirations from? Tell me why in Dandadan no one seems to have an issue with the character Muko, who wears the style of the Manbu Gyaru, which is specifically associated with having a fake tan and exaggerated makeup highlights. I don't believe that Manbu Gyaru is intentionally trying to be racist, but it is still a form of a black face, a brown face, to kind of put on this makeup and be able to take it off whenever you want. Yeah, with the fashion style of Manbu Gyaru and understanding that it's just fashion and mostly done out of a sense of style and self-expression, then why can't the same be true for people who make fan art of their favorite characters that just happen to look like them, which could include people who are Black, brown, different facial features, different hair features, etc. I want y'all to really think about that. But I think the biggest hypocrisy that pro-Black fan art communities argue with is why is there so much hatred towards race-bent fan art like the Dandadan one, like the other ones shown above that included Spy Family, Demon Slayer, and My Hero Academia. Yet people seem to have loved versions of Brazilian Miku, an alternative persona of the popular Vocaloid, Hatsune Miku, which features Miku dressed in clothing that features the Brazilian flag, wearing jean shorts, has curly hair, and tan skin. In the art for one of the original Brazilian Miku artists, Aaron Artista, who didn't receive as much recognition as they should have for kind of making the trend, you can see features I'm talking about along with other food elements that are specific to Brazil and Brazil's culture. This is similarly seen in the Brazilian Miku that went viral, which was redrawn by Doodly Sherry, and this fan art in particular is the one that blew up. It sparked endless versions and creations of Brazilian Miku across Twitter and beyond, and even inspired other versions of Miku from various countries around the world, from Malaysian Miku to Mexican Miku to American Miku and beyond, including multiple versions of Brazilian Miku among other countries done by Japanese artists as well. Yet again, though, there is a specific trend of Miku being drawn as Black, and this specifically getting a level of hate that other versions did not seem to get, particularly with an African American Miku done by Molinade that caused some controversy, with some people arguing that American Miku doesn't have cultural clothing, when I just have to go off real quick. This specific style is literally the basis for street fashion that the entire world knows today. Tell me where you think baggy clothing mixed with cropped tube tops and baggy jeans and sneakers comes from, because if it's not from early 2000s American pop, hip hop, and street culture popularized by certain artists like Aaliyah, then I don't know where you think it came from, because that is exactly where it came from. You don't have to look that far in history to see that that is what started the style, and these other places are inspired by it. Honestly, there's a user that says it better than I can when they write, I think it's crazy that people are claiming that this isn't cultural for the fact that she's wearing streetwear, but no one has said anything about Brazilian Miku wearing simply a cropped shirt and shorts. Why is that? As for the double standard in the fan art space, I think CU Chio says it best in their fan art of Brazilian Miku when they say, this is what the people shitting on race swapping look like right now. Despite this seemingly hypocritical approach and argument, still people argue that Brazilian Miku, similar to spider sonas, are an exception solely because these are characters that are seen as blank slates that anyone can attach personality to, especially since in Miku's case, where she is seen as a stand-in for a system that any user can make music with, and not as a character with their own story and character arc. But despite the sentiment though, there are people who argue that black or darker skinned versions of her are not acceptable, while also at the same time praising Brazilian Miku in the same breath. And we should also acknowledge that the CEO of the company that owns Vocaloid even put out a statement back in 2020 that says that Miku is for everyone, along with a Black Lives Matter hashtag. From my perspective, fan artists are not saying that their art is better than the original, and cosplayers aren't saying that their cosplays are how the character should be portrayed. I believe both of these people are simply making art out of appreciation of the characters and stories that they love, with their own unique spins on them. It makes me question why fan art is seen as taboo, when beloved characters are often turned into gender-bent versions of the original, or monsters, or animals, or Pokemon, or Sonic characters for fun, and often get praised, or often go under the radar, or often don't make any big waves. Yet specifically when it comes to race-bent, darker skinned characters, this is where we get into vitriol. When you look at these equally creative works of art, do you also believe that they are erasing Japanese ethnic features even when Japanese artists are the ones creating them at times? So we do need to address that anime and manga do feature characters who are culturally and ethnically Japanese, some of which are represented in ways that do feel authentic to Japanese people and their features, and others that are represented in ways that purposely do not. This is often because some of the designs of anime and manga are influenced by Mukokuseki. Though I explore the concept of Mukokuseki in detail in another video, they should definitely watch after or before this one because they go hand in hand. I have to reinstate it in this video in order to break down just how impactful this approach is to anime and manga, and how that also plays an effect on race-bent art and fan artists. Mukokuseki is essentially an odorless design that erases or minimalizes racial or ethnic features in Japanese works to make them seem more globally accessible. It is used not only in anime and manga, but also in technology, novels, gaming, music, and more, and has led to global success for multiple Japanese exports. At the same time, this concept and its desire to be universal often unintentionally promotes exclusionary practices in media by considering the default to be often white or Eurocentric or people with light hair, light eyes. Features that are often seen in main characters in popular anime and are often considered default for what is considered a good, respectful, or interesting character. And also features that many East Asian people would say does not actually represent how they look. The appeal of Mukokuseki is its use as escapism for Japanese audiences to imagine themselves in far-off worlds, almost like isekai, so that they can feel comforted in something that is different, yet still somewhat culturally related to where they are and who they are. But because of this, some Aryan/neo-Nazi, allegedly social media users that like anime see this medium as a way of representing their ideal society. In this quote from Black Bodies at Play, Race and Gender at the Edges of Subjectivity, written by Sarah Ann Gresham, she explores this by questioning What does it mean when dark-skinned black viewers who have different power positions to white fans can never read themselves into simplified and abstracted characters the same way white and other racialized viewers can, due to the presumption of a universalized character form that does not include them? What does it mean politically for anime, always already outfitted with so much color and contrast to manga, to construct entire worlds devoid of blackness? The configuration of these characters, no matter how abstracted, is never neutral, but is implicated within the same set of social relations that order and arrange bodies in the real world. And this is where I believe everything comes full circle. In a medium that purposely tries to appeal to all, while also continuing to ignore a large portion of the audience that consumes it, it is no wonder that black fans, brown fans, fans that feel that they have features that are different from what is commonly shown in their favorite medium, have created ways to express themselves through the mediums they love in their own personal way. Because, for example, if no one bats an eye at Rengoku having blonde hair and red eyes in Taisho period Japan, which is in the early 1900s, in Demon Slayer, or if no one complains about an ending scene in Hunter x Hunter where Gon and Killua are given dark skin for no apparent reason whatsoever, or if people use Mukokuseki to defend the fact that Scarlett Johansson can be cast as Motoko Kusanagi in Ghost in the Shell live-action movie. People are even happy to have actor Inaki Godoy cast as Luffy because Oda-sensei, the mangaka, signed off on the fact that Luffy would be Brazilian. However, when it came to Jacob Romero playing the role of Usopp, people started to lose their minds, even though Oda also says in interviews that Usopp would be African. Make it make sense.
Usopp is not black. Just because Oda said he's African, his skin color would mean he's either of mixed race or brown. Usopp's complexion is not that dark. And this casting was so good, he doesn't just look like the character, he looks like his dad.
If these artists who created these characters were having fun and being creative with the designs in the first place, then why is it an issue for fans to have fun with character designs in their own way? So to answer the question that I started it all off with, is there hypocrisy in the fandom or just hatred? I believe that, yeah, there is hypocrisy in the fandom. There is also racism, there's also discrimination, there's also bias and hatred too. But one thing to remember is that these aspects are not all that fandom is, and it's not all that fandom should be. Fandom is also acceptance, it's also creative expression, it's also connection through a medium that you love and sharing that love with other people. As a fan that doesn't have the physical features that are prevalent in my favorite medium, which is anime, I understand as much as anyone what it's like to not fit this narrow standard of what people think you should look like when you watch anime, or enjoy anime, or talk about anime. And despite people questioning my validity as a fan every time I post a video on this channel, I still make these videos anyway. The sole reason that keeps me wanting to make them is the fact that someone out there can look at my video and see that someone who looks like them or someone that they can just relate to watches the same thing as them, and maybe it makes them feel a little less alone when in other aspects of their life they feel isolated. I also feel like a broken record for saying that I'm aware that I'm not the target demographic for anime and manga. I totally get it. I am not at all a Japanese person. As a Black American woman, I have very little say in what actually goes on in anime and in manga and in the industry that runs it. There seems to be this weird double standard type of view from certain people, and by me saying my opinion on things, they think that I also have that same level of authority over anime and manga when I don't. I hate to say it, I have no actual authority on what's going on in the anime industry. I literally am just a fan, and no matter how much I talk about it, I probably will never have any real influence on Japan's anime industry. However, just because I don't have a lot of power in the industry doesn't mean that I don't have opinions on it, and I'm going to talk about them. Just like artists aren't going to stop making art, musicians aren't going to stop making music, cosplayers aren't going to stop cosplaying simply because what they're doing isn't making an impact on their favorite franchises and works. The reason they're doing it is because what they are doing is making an impact to them or other people who relate to them. The fact is, this simple fan art of Dandadan has sparked some deeper conversations that I think are important and should be the highlight of the conversation, rather than like all the hate and vitriol that people want you to think is important, and it's just not. It just doesn't actually go anywhere. It doesn't do anything. Underrepresentation in media is something that we should be talking about, because it does affect our real life. It does affect how we view other people in the world. It is the reason I believe that certain wars are given more screen time and more coverage than others. It is the reason why some people care about people's plights more than others. And it is why we need to talk about even something as small as fan art and representation, because it leads back to how we view real people in the real world. If people don't view people with darker skin as people deserving of humanity, then what is going to happen to those people? I also wanted to make an impact in some way with this video, because it's so dark and kind of messed up, by running a fundraiser for the Palestine Children's Relief Fund over on Tiltify. You can find the link in the description. This is my first time doing a fundraiser and trying to combat some of the wild things going on in the world. I hope to do more fundraisers in the future, but if you can support or just spread the word on this video and on the fundraiser, please do that. The link will be in the description and the pinned comment as well. Even if you can't support, find a way to spread the word about the issues going on in the world and how you can help, and find ways that you can help in your own way. I want to thank the over 120 people who responded to the survey that I sent out for this video. If you were a fan or an artist or a cosplayer, thank you so much for your thoughts and words. Thank you again to all my patrons for making this video possible. As always, be kind to one another. I would say peace, but instead of signing off here, I'm gonna leave you guys with a couple more heartfelt responses on why people think art is important to them based on the survey that I got. So yeah. My name is Rafat. Says, I like to create something out of nothing. I enjoy the storytelling in anime and how it connects with the viewer. I wish for my art to do the same. Anonymous says, it's a great way to hone my skills as an artist, and also I just enjoy talking about media I like and meeting people with similar interests, and art and cosplay communities are great for that. Another anonymous user says, they love for art and fan art to express my love for the series, my series, and to fill the void of content I want but don't have externally. Chibi Vesicle says, I draw both fan art and do cosplay. I do these things as they are fun, a hobby, or even a challenge. Cosplay that requires you to draw your own patterns, develop the outfit, and all that requires effort and thought. Sometimes they can be easy or a lot of work, but it is the payoff at the end. For fan art, it is the same. Sometimes I just want to draw a character in X, or maybe I'm trying a new technique or concept. Jay Papillon says, doing art gives meaning to my life. I can live and put out thousands of things I need in order to keep sanity. Al says, character design and illustration is my full-time job. I'm an independent artist who has been drawing for as long as I could hold a crayon in my 2-year-old fist. And I've worked hard to turn my passion into a sustainable career. I make art because I love creating and bring smiles to others' faces.